Hello everyone. I hope you can hear me clear and loud. Say in the chat box if you can hear me clearly. Waiting for people to join. Say hi in the chat box so we'll start immediately. Anyway, I hope you all are doing fine, and you know what? Here there is a rain and you can just hear something, right? So anyway, sorry for if there is any disturbance in between, but I hope that's fine. Anyway, you can hear me clearly. So just say hi in the chat box, then we'll begin. Anyway, slowly people will join and we'll begin anyway right now. So first of all, I just wanted to tell you that before in our previous session we had a kind of good session on Indian classical criticism. We had some kind of good code that help us to remember about all in order, especially chronologically. As you have seen, if you have attended previous year exam, you must have faced some of the questions, like they asked about Kalidas, they ask about Bhasa, Bhartahari, all these people, right? They usually they ask about the chronological order, and that's very important for you in exams perspective. That's why we have all the codes for you to remember everything, so you won't forget any single stuff, right? So in previous, as you know, in our session at 9 p.m., and remember it's alternative days, like today's Monday, we have previously we took a session on Saturday, Sunday was off, and again uh, 1 day gap, and then we'll start different. So we have started from Indian classical criticism, and we talked about all the codes and whatever is important in Natya Shastra, because they used to ask about rasa theory a lot, but they stopped and they started asking about drama part. You know how many forms forms of drama that they talked about, right, in Natya Shastra, and we already talked it's 10, and all the question we have solved whatever they have asked in the past. And similarly, we are going to talk about Plato, Aristotle. Remember, these two are, uh, you know, very kind of very important figure in criticism. Everything started from there. Like for example, if you talk about Plato, I'm just giving you some background before let others join, but before that we'll just talk about what kind of question and why these two figure are very important in literary criticism. So when we talk about Plato, you know Plato started this kind of trend, at that time, that he said that all the poet should be banned from any ideal state or my ideal state, because they are the liar, and poetry is the mother of lie, because they represent the reality of human. It's all fictional, imaginative, so therefore it's not real, and that's not truth. And he says that philosophy is above poetry, because philosophy represent the human life, and that what is actually above poetry. So that's what he said in in his Republic itself. And from there, Aristotle started talking about this poetry, Plato's kind of that blame, that he said that poetry should be banned again, banned in the ideal state. So Aristotle started just moving further. Then what happened in our English literature, our Philip Sidney said that the poet is the least liar. Very important that Aristotle said, right? Oh, Philip Sidney said. And then we again, then if we move little bit further, then we have PB Shelley, who also talks about Plato's that blame that they have. So all these things are very important, and these two are the building pillars of your European classical criticism, especially in English literature. So, for Philip Sidney, we already had a session, but we'll do it one more time when we talk about Renaissance criticism, and we'll, talk all sorts of critics at that time as well, right? So, first, let me tell you and introduce you European classical criticism. So, anyone, if you're there, just say hi in the chat box, and then we'll begin, right? Let's begin. I hope people will join later or they can watch it later anyway. So, Plato, very important thing you should know that everything they ask in chronology order. If they will ask, you should know the Plato came first, and then Aristotle, and then after that we had Horace, uh, actually Longinus, then Horace, and then we have other like Philip Sidney, right? And we have again Shelley, then we have Wordsworth in fact before, and then we have Matthew Arnold. These are the question you usually get. Then we have T.S. Eliot, and if you add a little bit more before after Philip Sidney, you can add then then Samuel Johnson. So these kind of chronological order, you get question from that itself. So if you know all these things, all these people, all these critics in chronological order, then it's very easy for you to answer, right? So uh, let's talk about Plato for now. So Plato 1427 to 347. So what basically is important, these things are that you can read through the notes, or you can just take the snapshot of it, or just screenshot, and then you can read it when you are free. So what basically is important, that what he said about poetry. So he said about the poetry is what, the mother of lies, and it should be banned, you know from my ideal state or any ideal state. That's what he talked about. Then he had the idea, theory of idea form, and then he also talked about a couple of more things that anyway we'll talk about, right? So Plato, as you know, he's the first one and the Greek philosopher, everybody knows, and pupil of Socrates. So this character, we don't know if Socrates was real or not. We can see him in his Republic. So he was the guy who was talking, in a dialogue with other in Republic. So that's what it is important. And remember, he founded the academy near Athens. So you should know this school is founded by Plato. And remember, he lived at Syracuse court. And Plato's pupil, who was it? It was Aristotle. And remember, his works are mostly dialogues. It's not written anywhere, but they are in the dialogue. His students actually, collected all these dialogues and, put it in a kind of, it was just going through the, you know, uh, through the ages, and then eventually it was written down later. And as you know, Aristotle and all of his work, as I said, written in epistle and dialogues, very important. And they are divided Bible. So if you're wondering why today there is no code, here you don't need code because there are not a lot of things to talk about. We just mention already all these stuff that you have to No, but for the code we'll talk about in Aristotle, because there is so confusing. Like there are six types of right. Um, Mythos are there, Dionysia. All of these stuffs are that we have actually very good code for you all. And then we have also important keyword, all the term like mimesis is there, right? Agnosis is there. All these stuff we have made in a code, so stick till the end, because you at least in your exam. So anyway, he wrote Apology, Meno, and Gorgias. And what you have to know, that his major work is Republic. They have asked on Republic. They have asked on Phaedo as well long ago, not in the recent exam. And of course, Symposium and Timaeus. So these things they have already asked in your exam. Right. Plato wrote not only on law but also mathematics, and it can also be seen in natural science. And he believed immortality of the rational soul. Very kind of, it's minor point anyway, but you should know. Right. And here it comes. What happens? Plato actually, the kind of, you know, he was a philosopher and he was against the arts. Whatever is the, represent imagination or the imitation, these things he was kind of against it, and he talked about it. He criticized the arts and poetry. And as I told you, he actually said what, that poetry is the mother of lies, right? So that's very important, because that's the main base of all the criticism that you're gonna talk, you're gonna learn later in the session and after the session. We also, when we talk about uh, Renaissance criticism and also in Romanticism, he believed art was an imitation of reality, not by once but twice. So not even original copy of anything, so but also kind of, you know copy of the original's copy. In fact, that's what he said about it, right? And he said that art actually can corrupt, individual, and not only individual but the whole society. So Platonic criticism examines what art's moral, ethical, and historical effect. So another work is there in Phaedrus' Ion Republic, and it actually recognizes art's role shaping social attitude and recognizes art's vision of universal truths. So also there are other thing that he talked about. Remember this work, Timaeus. Why this work is important? Because of that Quora concept. Later, who used other, like Derrida also used it, and Julia Kristeva. So basically, it means a, a special space, not kind of physical, but kind of, uh, uh, kind of different from what you think. So remember, Jake Derrida, very important. Quora actually usually you get question on Quora based on Julia Kristeva, but in the beginning it was in the Plato. So Julia Kristeva actually uh, take on Quora from Timesius Plato, Plato's work, very important. And Jake Derrida also talked about, and he has written some kind of small text with the title Khora as well. So Khora is what? A kind of, presignifying state, avoiding symbolic imitation. And Khora can be situated but never given a kind of definitive form. Very important, all these things, right? Now let's move on to the Republic. We have 36 dialogue. Can you just name 36 chapters we read about in our session? on 36 chapters. Where else it is? In Indian classical criticism itself. If you know, you can write in the chat box. Okay, so 36 dialogues are there, and remember who are there? Glaucon and Adeimantus. These two characters with who? With Socrates. Another character you can add. And what he said, that poetry is banished from its ideal state. And about the justice, what Socrates proposes, that why should I be just? And interlocutus means a person who takes part in a dialogue or conversation. There itself he talked about myth as well. So myth is what non-falsifiable narrative, and which depicts beings, deeds, or places beyond experience. And such narratives are about events beyond human understanding, right? And remember, not only he talked about poetry, but he also talked about allegory of cave, like the effect of education. If you can't get out of the cave, how will you know the world, right? So it was all about the lack of it on our nature. And remember, these two things they have asked in your exam as a point, like what he mentioned, that teacher is a kind of midwife and art is an imitation. Very important. So that's all our important thing that you should consider when you study or when you just prepare Plato. And the other thing is important, the idea of form, which means remove from reality, not one but, as I said, twice, right? And Plato's theory of form is explained in where these two things, Phaedo and Republic. And what he said, that forms are the immutable archetype. So these things that he kind of claimed, and forms guarantee ethical standard and scientific knowledge. And not only that thing, but he also talked about virtue. And what he said, virtue is the harmony between soul and ideas, and he divided it into two broad division. And what are they? The visible sensible realm and intelligible realm. Not just a that I have added extra. They, in your exam in UGC net, and they have asked actually about these two things. Not very old, but like 1 or 2 years ago, they have asked question on that as well. The theory of idea and form, and these two things they have already asked. It's very important that you should know the visible, which is actually sensible realm, and the intelligible realm. So what is forms? Actually it ensure order, intelligence, and pattern. Both all these 3 points are important. And the physical world is not independent and self sufficient, it is actually dependent on the realm of form, and forms can only be apprehended by reason, and physical object derive qualities from ideal form. And as you know, that he also talks about an object is beautiful by partaking in ideal beauty. And some of the term is there, like tellness, equality, and goodness are can be seen in the forms. So that's basically you have to remember. Other thing you can just think, like the form, the world of forms is changeless and eternal, and the physical world is perpetual change and decay. Remember, he not only talked about the idea of form, but he also talked about theory of art and why it is important. As I told you, the mother of lies and all this stuff, right? And it was actually there in the Republic itself. But here what he says, that Plato's view of art is connected to the theory of ideas. And what he said, ideals, ideas are the ultimate reality as seen in the Republic, and physical things are imperfect embodiment of ideas, and art is a copy of thing. And very important thing, twice removed from reality, as I told you in the beginning, and they actually ask question on that as well. And literature, painting, sculpture are what a kind of copy, and they are imperfect things, right? You cannot copy a man in, complete structure in a painting or in sculpture, because man is a different thing, he's a real. And your painting and your art is what, a copy from a real thing, but not once. First you copy in your mind and then you put it in paper or there. So twice removed from reality. And what other thing he said, that art takes us away from the reality, and that is actually true. And art serves no useful purpose in Plato's view. And art adds neither knowledge, very important, nor intellectual values. And art is deceptive and potentially dangerous. And what he said, that philosophy is over not only uh, poetry but also from art. As you know, poetry is also the form of art, right? And art is deceptive as it is dangerous, and the aim of art is to deceive the spectator, right? So that's what he talked about. As I told you in the beginning, imitates reality and removed reality not one but twice, right? That you have to know. And the Iliad is an example of immoral art. That's what he talked about, Iliad. And Plato considers art to be removed from true reality, right? And it misleads what individual, it doesn't add anything, any knowledge in them, right? So that's what he actually is talking about here. And his views on poetry, as I told you, twice removed this keyword you should know, sudden, not long thought, right? The poetry only comes like sudden inspiration, not like philosophy. You have to think about a lot and all these stuff in philosophy, right? But in poetry, some kind of sudden inspiration, you sit down and pen down a beautiful poem, right? And according to him, that you are not telling about the real stuff, but you are telling which is actually twice removed from the reality. That's what exactly he's talking about. And as I told you here, very important, poetry is the mother of lies. And Philip Sidney, what he does, this question they have asked in your exam, refuted Plato's charge that poets are liars, right? But by arguing that the poet, who said that is Plato said, and he refuted Philip Sidney. And what he said, nothing affirm, poet nothing affirm, and therefore never lie, right? Poetry contains truth but fails the test of reason. That's what Plato said. And poetry cannot replace philosophy. As I told you, what he said, poetry is over, you know poetry is less than, and your philosophy is actually higher than poetry. That's what he talked about, right? He also talked about good teacher, and he also said that poet should also be a good teacher. Plato suggests truth as the test of poetry, and the poet is good artist if a good teacher. The poet is imitator, and a last he talked about important these points that I'm telling you here from, because they have asked in the exam. The poet has no knowledge of the world, and poetry does not improve the intellect like philosophy does. And poetry is morally neutral, offering no guidance, and it affects human emotions, leading to corruption, right? And function is what? Educate, not entertain. Primary function. And PB Shelley and Philip Sidney already that they have wrote that defense of poetry, and which was both against Plato, and both kind of wrote, and they have supported the value of poetry. And Shelley emphasized poetry rules role what moral and social progress. And in a defense of poetry, what Shelley argued for poetry's importance. And Sydney again defended the apology of poetry, and that he said at the least lie, right? And in to sum up Plato's four argument, and that is very important in your exam point of view. Poetry composes through inspiration, not reason or logic, and that's a kind of true thing, right? Poetry is ignorant, that I don't know if you agree, and teaches the wrong stuff. And poetry is mimesis, again like about the copying, two, not one but two removes from the really real thing. And poetry encourages wrong emotion in the audience, right? And so that was all about our Plato. And other thing about drama, he also talked about it, drama stuff, and that will anyway here discuss. So these four, if you know, then your whole Plato is actually done. And that's what they have asked in your exam. And some his views on theater and drama also. Plato sees drama as a branch of poetry, and according to him, it's kind of staged, and mostly kind of it all depends on the audience and their reactions. And he also says that these dramatists, what they do, they used kind of cheap technique like quarrels, lamentation, and some of them techniques are like shame in normal life, and please with such technique. Why we have add about drama? Because in rasa, right, they used to ask in Natya Shastra and Bharat, to ask about rasa. Recent exam, they have asked about drama part. So in Plato also, what we did, we not only talked about poetry, but we have also added what we have added his drama part. And that's for you to be in the safer zone, and that's what we have added here. And all these things, anyway, you can take a snapshot and read it when you get time, right? So anyway, what you have to know, that he had some views on theater and drama as well. And he also talked about the idea of good is like the sun. Just you have to know that he has also kind of theory on the idea of the good. And here is now we're gonna have a very good session on Aristotle. It's very important because you're definitely going to see two questions on Aristotle, and one is direct one, and the other would be what indirect question. So two question definitely you're gonna get, one from Plato, basic eventually you'll get the question from Philip Sidney talking about in your exam, Plato's, all these stuff that they'll ask in your exam. And in Aristotle, definitely you're gonna see two questions, because it's very important, not only in where in poetry but also in drama. So he basically, we have the surviving work of drama part, right? And that's what we're gonna talk about here. Little bit about his life, so you can just know what kind of philosopher, and actually not philosopher, but so many things he was. Not once but so many. He was mathematician, right? And he was a kind of like geologist, metaphysics, logic, aesthetic, music, everything he talked about. He also talked about linguistics, economics, and geology. So all this stuff is added. So like day, what we do, we only specialize in one field. And Aristotle, you see so many works, like physics, biology, zoology, metaphysics. So he doesn't have a kind of limitation like after exam, after your 12th. In fact, you take either math, biology, or arts, or you can go for business, all this stuff. But this guy is kind of, he knew every single stuff. Somebody says that my voice is breaking. Let me see. Volume is okay. Can you hear me now properly? Can you say I'm just kind of increasing the voice, input voice? Is it okay for you guys? Because Aristotle is very important and you should not miss, because we're gonna have a lot of codes that you can remember, right? And let me know, Tabinda, that if you can hear me clearly now. Is it okay? I'm just increasing the volume. Am I doing plus or minus? Yes. Okay. I hope you can hear me clearly now. Okay, great. Now she can, uh, uh, you guys can hear clearly, and we'll just quickly start on Aristotle. So, as you know, he was orphaned at young age. So he was a student of Plato, and also he tutored who? None other than Alexander the Great. Very important. And as you know, he was specialized in not only in your art and as a critic, but also in physics, biology, zoology, metaphysics, and all this stuff. Right? I already told you. And he developed what? Deductive method. So deductive is what? You have a statement, clear statement, that what you're gonna do, just uh, you know short it down, right? So you start with the problem, then the general statement, all these statement comes, right? And what happens in inductive reasoning, can you tell me? You just kind of observe so many stuff, and then you come with a conclusion and one statement, that is your inductive, right? So he developed deductive method, and especially it uses in your number system, right? In numbers, in mathematics, all these things. So very important. Anyway, we have a kind of very good notes on research, and also whole paper one. In fact, we have completed all the notes on paper one. We are actually searching for the questions to add there. Already we have finished 3 units with the questions, but the other, what we are doing, we are just searching everywhere, because that it's not like for English only. We have a lot of subjects, different paper one, right? So for that, we are actually searching a lot of questions and then making a perfect book for you that you will never get anywhere else. And all the books in the market are bullshit. I have read it, all of it, in paper one, and nothing comes in your exam. It's just some other that what was it, I do not want to mention their name, but a couple of books are very famous. It used to work before, but now it's completely different. They're asking different type of question, not the old one. And of course, it all based on the trend, right? So these are old book, not useful for you, and we'll have a very good book very soon, and I'm excited that. Anyway, I'll give you the notes when we start paper one. I was planning to start paper one on Sunday, but what happened that again, if we start from the beginning, then it's good. Otherwise, I was thinking from the unit 10, because I have prepared notes from unit 8, 9 and 10. So 3 units are done with the question. So I was thinking from that. Then I thought it's a start from the beginning. So I kind of stopped, and we'll start very soon, maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So of course you should follow the channel right now, and of course write paper one in the chat box. So I'll just send you some of the sample that you can just see, and if you like it, you can just ping me or text me. Of course you can WhatsApp me, and of course Telegram channel is there, you can join, ask anything whatever you want. Anyway, as I told you, he also started school. What? This one, Lyceum, known as peripatetic school. And Aristotle rhetoric is a treatise. So you all know about poetics, but he also wrote on rhetoric, and that question they have asked in your exam as well. So Aristotle rhetoric is, as you know, is about Greek treatise on persuasion, and it dates again 4th century. And the rhetoric is art of rhetoric, all about those speech and words that you use to make it awesome, whatever the speech or text, and it gives you some kind of sublime, as what our Longinus said. So that's very important, and that these texts, and these speech evokes kind of emotions and reason. So that's what he actually talked about in rhetoric, very important. And of course he has written metaphysics, and there was recent question that they have asked about the Plato's work, and in the question they have given all the works of Plato, and one of them was not, and they have asked about that you have to identify which one is not written by Plato, and it was option was there, metaphysics. So that kind of question you get in exam. So you should know all the works from Plato, Aristotle, and again Longinus only one work, and Horace you have only one work, Poetica, Ars Poetica, that they usually ask, right? So Aristotle is kind of we have actually, as you know, politics is a big subject, right? And there is a lot of thing about Aristotle, and it's, if you read him thoroughly, it's gonna take you like whole week to complete it and to understand it. And what we did here in this note, that we have kind of break it down the whole work into some small subplots, and only based on what your PYQ. So whatever they have asked in the past, that we have, and whatever the trend is going on from the past 5 to 6 years, that's what we are covering. And definitely it's not going to go back to the trend, right, back past, but it's only going to follow the trend, or maybe some advanced thing will come, right? And that's what our notes are all about. So, as I told you about metaphysics, he talks about metaphysics and explore first philosophy. You should know about the work, and that'll be enough, right? And Aristotle poetics, very important. That what we're gonna talk about later. But you should know that we are just going through all his work. So first is what we have rhetoric. Second is metaphysics. Third is poetics, and fourth is our natural, which basically means is natural phenomena. That's all you have to know here. I have just added extra for you to read, and they have asked about this as well in your exam about his works. You have to select which one is by Aristotle. So that's what we have. They have asked on Organon as well. So let's move on to poetics, and that's what you have been waiting for. And I was also excited about to tell you a lot of things, because the whole poetics is a lot of stuff, and we have completed the whole poetics in 2 single sentence, and that will cover every single stuff there. Right, so let me begin. As you know, we have 26 chapters on poetics. Can you tell me 36 chapters where are there? We talked about it tonight, and also we talked about in our previous session on Indian classical criticism. Can you tell me what was, is it Natya Shastra or is it any other stuff? Can you just write in the chat box? Then I'll just know. So 36 chapter, can you guess where was it? So in poetics we have only 26 chapter, 10 less than what we have in republics and also in Natya Shastra. That's what I wanted to tell you. And the art of poetry is divided into three category according to Plato in poetics: verse drama, lyric poetry, epic poetry. They have asked actually two questions based on that in your exam. I don't exactly remember which year, but it was a recent question that they have asked. Remember, verse drama, lyric poetry, epic poetry. And each genre exhibit what? The common stuff: imitation or mimesis, but it is different in three ways. And what is the difference? The difference in music, rhythm, harmony, meter and melody. They have asked a question on it. And the difference in goodness and characters, and the difference in how the narrative is presented, or a kind of telling a story. Like they have asked question on that. And the three most prominent have concerned what? We have catharsis, hamartia. Remember that we're gonna talk about in our code. Anyway, as you know, he actually contradict in between chapters 13 to 14. And tragic and epic are the only part that is surviving. We don't have about anything about comedy, which is actually lost. So if it was kind of survived, you would have studied that too, and in your exam that would have been also asked, right? So mimesis, simple, is imitation of life. And these three important thing here, it's that epic is equal to poetry, and the tragedy is above poetry, and the comedy is for lower people. That's what he talked about, right? So now tragedy. Let me tell you about the tragedy and everything in the part, whatever is there left in poetics, whatever is surviving is all about your tragedy, right? So that's what we're gonna focus here. So the language with pleasurable accessories refer. This is the question they have asked in your exam: rhythm, harmony, and song. So language with pleasurable accessories. What does Aristotle refer here? And in the option there were so many stuff, and in that there was rhythm, harmony, and song. Very important. They have asked question on that, and very recent question, that's why we have put it here. And what he said: tragedy should have embellished language with these elements. What elements? Structure. Tragedy must be dramatic but not narrative. And emotion, it should what? Arouse pity and fear, right? And catharsis, and these emotion must be purged through your senses, your and magnitude must be serious, not a kind of comedy or something, like funny stuff is there, like tragicomedy. In our Elizabethan time we had tragicomedy. So what basically, if he would know that if there is any tragicomedy, definitely Aristotle would have said what? Tragedy must be serious, right? So that's what he talked about. And completeness, a tragedy should be a complete in itself, it should not be left out in like in the half, right? And Aristotle emphasizes what? Importance in tragedies emotional impact. And language rhythm enhances tragedies, pleasure, and emotional depth. As you know, we have six parts in tragedy, and that's what we're going to talk about. We have mythos, which means plot, ethos means character, and we have dianoia means thought, lexis diction, and melos melody, obsesses spectacle. Now you're wondering, how will I be able to remember this in order and what means what, right? So first of all, you have to know that there is six, right? Six parts in tragedy. That's what is very important, the number. And then what you have to do with, you know, a code, you will remember the meaning also in the code. So what I'm telling you here, my plot is, so suppose here, let me see if anyone is there, we can just take an example of that as well. Suppose that Tabinda or Javid, whoever is there, or any other Vashu must definitely be there, because she's our consistent student. She always comes, on time. She always come on time, and that's what uh, actually good. Anyway, so suppose anyone, let's take example of mine, because I don't see a lot of people there in the live session, but let's take my example. My plot is my ethical character. My thoughts dance with lyrical diction, right? With lyrical diction, with melodic muse spectating up. So my represent mythos, plot, meaning, my ethical character. Ethical is your ethos, and character is definitely ethos mean character. And then we have my thought. My thought is what dance. Dance represent Dania, and that is your thought with lyrical diction. So your diction is Lexis. So Lexis is a lyrical here, and diction, of course, it means diction, and with melodic muse. So melodic muse is both melody and melos, easy to remember, spectating up. So ops means spectating. So remember this code, very important. If you remember this code, it will definitely, with with meaning, with order, and with how many parts are there, easy to, you can just grab. Another, we have important terms and meanings in there. We have a very good, let's take an example of my character, right? So, or my, if there is a copy of me, what I'm saying, my copy is proud and happy, and for my new retribution, but my harmful, tragic flaw, an uncertain identity. What makes my personality is reversing and purifying catharsis. Right. So let's break it down. Code mimesis, imitation, proud and happy, hubris and pride, and new retribution means nemesis and retribution, harmful, tragic flaw, hamartia is tragic flaw, uncertain identity, anagnosis, recognition or identity, and the code itself. And you know my personality is a reversing, okay, reversing personality, peripatia, and reversing reversal, purifying catharsis, and that is catharsis, purifying. So tell me how easy it was to remember every single stuff with a meaning. And for the code, my copy is proud and happy, and for my new retribution, you know but my harmful, tragic flaw and uncertain identity makes my personality reversing and purifying catharsis. How easy it was to remember every single stuff in tragedy, right? And that's done. That's all about your tragedy here, and that's what, where you're gonna get question in your exam, right? So according to Aristotle, tragedy has seven characteristics. As you know, mimesis, mimetic, it is serious and somber. It tells whole story, and appropriate length should be there, and it contains what? Rhythm and harmony. And the rhythm and harmony appear in different combination throughout the tragedy, and the tragedy is performed rather than narrated. They have asked question on that, and it evokes what? Feelings of pity and fear, which is purified by your catharsis, right? So that's our last point for today's class, because already we have kind of 1 hour already done. How many minutes? Let me see, 51 minutes. And the rest of the thing we'll talk about tomorrow, but let's complete Aristotle. Tomorrow we're gonna take on whatever the question they have asked in the past, and we have collected every single stuff here, as you can see in your screen. Anyway, first of all, on the art of poetry by Aristotle. So he not only talked about our tragedy or the drama, but he also talked about the art of poetry. As you know, mimesis, remember, it is also a part of art, right? Poetry. So poetry is mimesis according to him, and whatever is there that you have to remember, epic poetry and tragedy both what? Imitate serious subject. An epic poetry is written in narrative form, and epic poetry have no fixed time limit, unlike tragedy. And tragedy often shows what? Follows the single circuit of the sun. An early tragedy shared time structure with epic poem, right? A judge of tragedy can also judge epic poetry. So all epic parts are found in tragedy, and poets are most convincing. Anyway, you can just take a screenshot of it. It's very important uh, that you can read it later, because we have very less time here, and I wanted to finish it before 45 minutes or maybe 1 hour. But anyway, we have already extended it, so let's complete it, right? Again, poets are most convincing when feeling the described emotion. Distress and anger are best portrayed through real emotion, and poetry requires a gifted person or one with madness. And remember, the poet with madness may feel emotion fully. But anyway, what you have to remember here is that thing. Poetics is work on the dramatic theory, and it is the first philosophical treatise on literary theory, as we know. And Aristotle, what defines as the poetic art. So anyway, that's what you should know, all these stuff in so we already covered Plato and Aristotle. We actually wanted to cover Horace and Longinus, but what happened is that will later, right? And also we have Dante Alighieri, the Divine Comedy, and we have Convio or the Banquet. Then letter to Ken, uh, Grande della Scala, and Giovanni of Boccaccio is also there, the Decameron. So obviously we might need another session, and of course we have all the questions here. Like for example, if you want me to solve the question, let me see how many are there. If it's plus 20, then we'll just do it tomorrow. uh, 24. Okay, 24 is fine. There are so many questions. Remember, all these notes you can get it. You just have to, telegram me. I will tell you the process how you can access. For example, who among the following translated Aristotle Poetics in Latin, not in English? So it was Giorgio Valla. So same kind of question. And name of the translator other than English, we have Thomas Twingen. Then we have Latin, Wilhelm Lonas. English, Bywater, Ingram, and then Italian, in Augusto, Rostani, all these people are there. And then another question: what does Aristotle mean by the phrase language with pleasurable accessory? We already talked about it, right? It is what rhythm, harmony, remember, and music as well. So we have C and D, a language with a song, music. Remember that particular point we already discussed. Very just now we have discussed. So which of the following are Plato's main objection against? So the poet is an imitator, definitely, right? And then we have the poet is incapable of bravery, definitely. The poet, by fueling passion, emotion, what weakens the reasoning capacity, that's true. The poet is less responsible, the poet has no knowledge of the world, true, right? So we have all these A, C, and E, true. For explanation, we have already everything here, we already discussed. This is for you extra too. And argument, poet composed through inspiration, not real law, reason or logic. Poetry is ignorant, that teaches wrong stuff. And poetry is mimesis, again two time remove. And poetry encourage wrong emotions, right? So that's all are there. And which among the following was not recognized as a major dialogue of Plato? So we know Crito, Phaedra, Symposium. Remember the question we already I mentioned there while I was discussing about Aristotle. So it was by Aristotle, right? So who among the following believe that poetry was only an imitation of an imitation, therefore travel? Easy, twice. Remember, we have that twice removed from reality. Okay, the two broad division of reality in Plato's theory of what? Visible and intelligible. And who among the following refutes Plato's charge? So, charge, as you know, the poets are liar, Plato said, and who kind of, refuted? And it was our Philip Sidney in the defense of poetry. And which two of the following poets defended poetry against Plato? Everybody knows Shelley and Sidney. Easy to answer. And read the following passage. So it's a passage about Plato, and it is asking that we can do later. We have less time, the less. Okay. Identify the correct option in Julia Kristeva definition of Khora. So Khora, as we have already discussed, it's non-expressive totality and created by bodily drives. And the Khora has no fixed identity. We already talked. And anyway, when we talk about Julia Kristeva, we'll talk about Khora in detail. But as you know, it was also by Plato. Derrida also talked about it in Khora, so that's very important. And the Khora has no fixed identity, obviously, and it precedes the linguistic sign. Right. Question 17. Which among the following are not true in the defense of poesy? Not true. Right. An apology, that's true. Philip Sidney criticizes Geoffrey Chaucer's Troilus and Cressida and the Spencer. Actually, he not criticizes it, but he kind of supported it. So that is our here is wrong, but our answer would be C. Right, and the text is the first major piece of, that's easy. And the text defends Plato's from his decision to ban poets from defends Plato. So he was not defending, he was kind of refuting and was against it. So that question, obviously, so we have C and E is the answer, right? Easy to answer. How easy question they're asking, right? And match the following, everybody know Horace Poetica. We have John Dryden, dramatic poesy, Samuel Daniel, defense of rhyme, Ben Jonson, discovery, timber, about the language and word. We have discussed, you will know what is timber and discovery, and of course it's a common language or for common people, like in our Wordsworth lyrical ballad preface. So that's the kind of question that you should know. Again, unlike Plato, what is the question? Unlike Plato, Aristotle considered the poetry as its but require great skill and also differentiate between good and bad poetry and on clear and systematic aesthetic ground. That's true. Aristotle accepts Plato's insight that emotions are important to poetry but rejects Plato's distrust of the emotions. Both the statements are true and we already talked about it. Question number 20. Again, we have apology for poetry, we have this defense of, and about symposium this and rhetoric this. Easy to answer. And then again, who defined Hamartia? Question for kids, right? Okay, which one of the following statement is true about Aristotle poetics? True about. He asserted that the value by focusing on imitation rather than rhetoric. He asserted that the value of poetry by giving preference to rhetoric over imitation. He asserted the value of poetry by integrating rhetoric and emotion, and he asserted a value of poetry by focusing on both rhetoric and mimesis. So what he actually is talking about, the value of poetry by focusing imitation mimesis rather, remember the word rather, not over, right, not integrating, not focusing. So no, only rather. So that's what you have to remember. Question number 23 again. Sweetness and light, Matthew Arnold, catharsis, Aristotle, response to Stephen Gisson, Philip Sidney, individual talent, T.S. Eliot. Easy to answer. In less than 10 seconds, you can answer, right? Identify the correct match. Aristotle, that's true. Quintinium, that's true. uh, PR when understanding fiction. Harold Bloom, The Great Tradition. No, it is by our F.R. Lewis and all these stuff, right? F.R. Lewis. According to Longinus, which two of the following qualities applied a great poetry? One question in 5 years on Longinus. That's the trend right now. It must be the work of genius, an inspired person, definitely. It should evoke you a kind of feeling, sublime feeling. Anyway, we'll talk about sublime, very well. Actually, I was planning tonight itself, but we have already exceeded this session, and that's what we're gonna complete tomorrow. So guys, that's all. I think we have completed the question. We have completed today Plato, Aristotle, and of course PYQ on them, right? So we have discussed today, and tomorrow we're going to talk about whatever is left, and also we'll start our paper one, and I want to show you our paper one notes. It's so good that you will definitely like. So again, before you go after the session, you should what like the video, and also if you have any comment, you can make a comment, and definitely you should subscribe the channel, and if possible you can share it and watch one more time. And of course, you don't forget to take a screenshot of the code that we have made, and if if anyone, if you want any notes, what you can do, you can just telegram me, or you can just join the channel and ask me there, right? So all these things are there. So for now, thank you so much. Bye bye and take care. I'll see you in the next session. Bye bye.